Hey guys, tonight we re-stepping back way back into a time when Earth was NT, exactly the cozy little blue marble you know and love. Imagine a world with no trees, no animals, no breathable air, just a young fiery planet still trying to get its act together. The skies boiling with acid clouds. The oceans were like simmering soup seasoned with dissolved iron and the occasional meteor. You're not wearing shoes because, well, nothing's invented yet, and also, your feet would melt right off. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Always fun to see who is snoozing where in the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're floating above the infant Earth now, like a sleepy cosmic ghost, just watching it all begin. It doesn't spin smoothly, yet it sort of wobbles, the way a top does when it's about to fall over, but somehow it holds together. The surface is a roiling mess, with tectonic plates not quite formed, and lava oozing in every direction like someone spilled spaghetti sauce across a kitchen floor the size of Texas. The air is thick, choking. You're not breathing it, thankfully just drifting in for the view. Carbon dioxide dominates the sky, mingling with nitrogen and trace gases that sound like ingredients in a wizard's brew. Ammonia, methane, hydrogen, sulfide, none of them particularly recommended for life. And yet this is the beginning. The pressure is immense. Raindrops sizzle into vapor before they can touch the ground. Lightning rips the clouds open like impatient toddlers unwrapping gifts they didn't ask for. Thunder doesn't boom, it growls, low and constant, like the Earth's belly in permanent indigestion. It's loud, chaotic, and oddly mesmerizing. Beneath the crust, magma churns like soup on high heat. The Earth's core is solidifying, iron collapsing in on itself, spinning faster than the surface, generating a magnetic field. Historians still argue whether this magnetic shield kicked in early enough to protect fledgling life, or if our planet just got wildly lucky. Either way, without it, we'd all be toast literally. The sun's solar flares would have roasted us off the face of existence before the first bacteria got around to photosynthesizing. But you don't need to worry about any of that. Just drift lower. Now you're hovering near the edge of what will one day become a continent. For now, it's a patch of rocky land jutting out between angry, steaming seas. The landscape is gray, jagged, and twitchy. Every few minutes, a vent hisses open with a hot breath of sulfur, and every now and then, boom, a volcano wakes up. And these volcanoes don't mess around. They are not the polite cones we know today that rumble quietly for days before erupting like they VA scheduled it on Google Calendar. No, these are temperamental giants. 1 minute calm, the next unleashing a tantrum that darkens the sky for days. Historians and geologists really still debate whether this early hypervolcanic phase helped or hurt the chances of life forming. Some argue the heat and chemicals created ideal conditions in sheltered pockets. Others think it nearly wiped the slate clean over and over again. You can imagine them as gods, not metaphorical gods, but literal beings, towering, alive, and terrifying. They belch molten rock and ash, rearranging the land beneath your feet. If you were a prehistoric human, somehow time-traveling in reverse, let's say you'd probably look up, see a glowing mountain-breathing smoke, and immediately assume something divine was happening, which is exactly what people did. Tens of thousands of years later, but tonight you're just watching. A river of lava begins carving a path through rock, crackling and spitting as it flows. You notice how it cools at the edges into a black, crumbling crust, even as its core stays bright orange. The whole thing feels alive, like an artery. You might even be tempted to name it, call it something like the burning tongue or fire snake. It wouldn't be the first time someone did. There's something almost hypnotic about it, isn't there? The way fire dances, unpredictable but smooth. The way ash falls like snow and silence follows each eruption, like the pause after a held breath. Even back in this lawless primordial chaos, there's rhythm. The Earth is not just exploding at random, it's pulsing, becoming. Zoom out a little. Start to notice shapes, patterns in the lava flows, ridges forming along what will become tectonic lines. It's no continents yet, no GPS coordinates, but the blueprint is there. Something is trying to settle. You get the sense that Earth is working on itself the way an artist sketches and erases and sketches again until the lines feel right. Then out of nowhere a light rain begins. Not gentle, not yet. More like a bucket tipping over. But the steam it makes when it hits the hot rocks curls upward, softening the edges of the scene. And in that moment, despite the chaos, you feel something close to peace. Sure, nothing could live here yet, but something is coming. You can feel it. Just don't breathe too deep. That hydrogen sulfide still smells like rotten eggs. The steam from that sudden rainfall still lingers, wrapping the jagged landscape in a damp, otherworldly fog. You drift above the slick black crust of newly cooled lava, the rock still too hot to touch, even in this mist. The rain, having bravely attempted its job, now recedes, probably reconsidering its life choices, leaving behind shallow puddles that hiss softly and vanish into vapor. This may not look like progress, but it is. You're witnessing the beginning of the water cycle. It's sloppy, noisy, and a little rude, but the planet is figuring it out. The skies send water down. The earth protests. Steam rises. Repeat. Give it a few million years and this clunky symphony becomes the soothing rhythm of rivers, rainforests, and seagulls stealing chips. Beneath the rocky crust, the magma hasn't gone anywhere. It still simmers, still seethes. But occasionally, it retreats. And when it does, strange things happen. Caves collapse, valleys form, and strange pockets open up where hot gases percolate through water. These hydrothermal vents become something like Earth's first spa treatments. Pitch dark. Blistering hot and somehow surprisingly full of promise. Now you're sinking slowly. Toward one of these vents on the ocean floor, the ocean is still tinted with a rusty hue, thanks to all the dissolved iron floating around. It's not the clear blue Caribbean paradise you might be dreaming of, but it's quiet down here, pressurized. Still, the only thing moving is a plume of superheated water rising in smooth spirals from a crack in the seafloor. And somehow, despite the boiling temperatures, crushing depth, and complete absence of sunlight, life may have begun right here. Tiny oddball molecules, amino acids doing awkward little dances. Cells so simple, they wouldn't even count as background characters in a biology textbook. But they're here. Maybe. Historians still argue whether life began in these vents or somewhere else entirely, perhaps in shallow tidal pools or hitched a ride on a comet. But hydrothermal vents are definitely a top contender. Now, we can't exactly rewind the tape and see it happen, but imagine it with me. A few carbon atoms, a spritz of hydrogen, a dash of sulfur, and one very determined molecule decides to replicate itself. It doesn't have a brain or a purpose, it just does. And with that, the long, messy party of life begins. The creatures that might have emerged first were nothing you'd recognize. Think of them as biological question marks. Cells with no nucleus. Squishy, blob-like things wobbling in the dark, bumping into each other like overly polite jelly beans. Some of them figure out how to eat sulfur compounds. Others find ways to split into 2, then 4, and on and on. You don't get romance or consciousness for a few billion years, but you do get chemistry. And chemistry, in Earth's infancy, is destiny. You drift gently over one of these vent fields. In the haze of minerals and shimmering heat, you imagine what it must have felt like to be the only form of life in an entire ocean. No predators, no parties, no sunlight, just warm mineral-rich bubbles and the endless rhythm of tectonic breathing. Honestly, it sounds kind of peaceful. It's like an eternal spa day, if spa days smelled faintly of eggs and featured zero amenities. Above, the surface world keeps evolving too. Volcanoes still dot the landscape like acne on a teenager's face, angry, eruptive, and embarrassingly frequent. One in particular seems unusually dramatic tonight. Doesn't just erupt, it screams. A column of ash punches into the sky, curling and twisting until it's lost in the upper atmosphere. And here's the thing about these eruptions. They're not just destructive, they also shape everything. The ash carries minerals. The gases thicken the atmosphere. The heat stirs the oceans. They're like Earth's tantrums that accidentally make art. Historians still debate whether these early volcanic outbursts were purely chaotic or served some deeper geochemical balancing act. Were they the planet's way of stabilizing its temperature? Or just random burps in the cosmic timeline? No one's sure, but people would be sure eventually. When humans appear eons later, they look at these fire-spewing mountains and don't see geology. they see gods. And why wouldn't they? Stand now at the foot of one such volcano, transported forward by imagination, if not by time. The air is thick with smoke, the ground rumbles under your bare toes, and in the distance, something long and sinuous moves through the steam. A snake, maybe. A metaphor. Across early cultures, from Polynesia to Mesoamerica to Africa, volcanoes and serpents often go hand in hand. Pet snakes, divine snakes, snakes that slither from the underworld to the peak of sacred mountains. Sometimes they're messengers, sometimes guardians, sometimes mischievous little troublemakers who live in caves and knock things over when the elders aren't looking. Cultures separated by oceans still invented remarkably similar myths. Coincidence? Scholars still argue about that too. But even back here, long before myths were told, the imagery writes itself. A volcano's glowing lava stream twisting down its side. It is a snake, a fire serpent, molten tongue tasting the land. In this quiet moment, with ash falling gently like soot-filled snow, you almost forget how dangerous it all is. The earth breathes, it burns, and it builds. You look out across a horizon that has never known human footsteps, no structures, no wheels, just wind, fire, and an ocean still deciding whether it wants to be blue. Sleepy yet? Don't worry. The earth's not done singing its lullaby of lava and steam just yet. Your feet now crunch gently over a newly formed shoreline, though to be clear, you're still a few billion years ahead of flip-flops and sunscreen. The sand beneath you isn't really sand yet, more like crumbled volcanic rubble softened by tides. The ocean laps quietly at the jagged coast, its color still unsettled, a bit like watery rust soup. You'd think such an uninviting place wouldn't be popular. You'd be right except for one enthusiastic crowd. Stromatolites. They sound like something a villain might throw at a superhero. But really, stromatolites are stacks of cyanobacteria, little single-celled creatures that go about their business of photosynthesizing and accidentally change the entire planet in the process. They sit there like stubby pancakes made of living slime, filtering sunlight and puffing out tiny bursts of oxygen. Not enough to start a campfire, but give them a billion years and they'll give you breathable air. You're standing at the edge of one of these microbial reefs, watching them burble away. There's something soothing about them. No rush, no drama, just quiet, cosmic level. Transformation at a glacial pace. They don't know they're heroes. They're just doing their thing, like sleepy lifeguards in a tide pool. Mainstream fact: stromatolites are among the oldest evidence of life on Earth, with some examples dating back over 3.5 billion years. Their layers preserved in rock offer scientists a glimpse into the Earth's earliest biosphere. And yes, they're still around today in Australia. For example, looking suspiciously like crusty stepping stones in shallow lagoons. Fringe tidbit? Some researchers propose that stromatolites might have sung, not with mouths, obviously, but with the gentle release of bubbles. Some speculate there could have been faint sounds, a low aquatic fizzing that might have echoed across the shallows, the planet's first music. If you're feeling romantic, historians and biologists still argue whether this bioacoustic whispering was anything more than wishful thinking, but as bedtime thoughts go, it's a pleasant one. You crouch near one of the reefs. The ocean smells faintly of iron and something else you can't quite name, ancient maybe. A metallic hush on the breeze. The sky is tinged orange from atmospheric haze. There are no trees yet, no birds, no clouds shaped like hippos, but you're not alone. From a tiny shadow, something flickers. It's not an animal, not really. More like a proto-organism, drifting in the shallows with no ambition but to exist. It has no eyes, no brain. And yet it reacts. Too light, too warmth. It twitches when your presence disrupts the stillness. This is the age of microbial mystery, where every blob might become something greater, eventually. Tilt your view upward. The sun is there, dimmer than you're used to. Scientists call it the faint young sun paradox back then. The sun only radiated about 70% of the power it does today. Yet somehow, the Earth stayed warm enough to keep its oceans from freezing solid. How? Greenhouse gases, methane-rich skies. A thicker atmosphere that trapped heat like a cosmic weighted blanket. Scholars still argue the mechanics of it all. But you don't need equations to feel the warmth. It wraps around you, mixed with wind from the sea and the sulfuric breath of distant volcanoes. Above, lightning sometimes dances across the sky brief, electric punctuation marks on an otherwise sleepy scene. You swear the earth is murmuring something, a lullaby in crackles and low rumbles. Maybe it's just your imagination. Maybe it's the sound of a world gently rearranging its guts. And now you travel slowly, seamlessly along one of Earth's earliest coastlines. Tides creep forward and back, tracing lazy fingers across stony flats. Here, pockets of briny water evaporate under the tentative sun, leaving behind salty crusts that shimmer like crushed crystal. In these pools, chemistry experiments are underway. Tiny molecules lock arms, disband, and reshuffle. Proteins try out new shapes like kids in a dressing room. Or nature's early multi-tool begins to assemble chains of instructions. You can't see it happening, not really, but you feel the momentum building. Something big is stirring beneath all this unassuming slime and froth. And then, a moment maybe only once in a billion years, something goes right. A molecule folds in just the right way. A sequence aligns. Replication begins. And suddenly, in the smallest imaginable way, something has learned to make copies of itself. Is it alive? It's debatable. Will it last? Who knows? But you're here to witness it, floating softly like a lazy feather on time's breeze. To your left, a cliffside collapses into the sea. The crash is distant, muffled, like someone dropping a piano in the next room of a dream. A fresh layer of rock joins the coast. Erosion starts. Somewhere else, lava cools into obsidian, glass-black and jagged. You could almost cut your thoughts on it. Still, the stromatolites bubble. Still, the atmosphere thickens, slowly, generously. A gentle wind picks up, carrying the breath of billions of cyanobacteria. Oxygen begins to increase. It's not enough for a bonfire, not even a candle butt. It's a start. The skies lighten, just barely. It's the ocean, slowly, almost reluctantly, begins its journey from crimson to blue. You sit on a rock, if we can call it. It's more of a warm, wet lump, but it's solid, and it cradles your weight. Around you, the world simmers with patient transformation. Nothing here is in a rush. Nothing needs to be. It's okay to close your eyes for a while. The stromatolites will keep bubbling. The tides will keep breathing. And Earth will keep dreaming its slow, volcanic dream. You wake, if we can call it that, to a new tone in the air. Something quieter, deeper. The kind of sound that hums beneath your ribs, like the low vibration of a mountain trying to form a thought. You Haven T moved much there as nowhere urgent to be when time is measured in tectonic shrugs, but the world beneath you certainly has. You're now standing at the lip of what will one day be a continent. It's not quite land yet, more like the idea of land, a gathering of crust that's grown thick and bold enough to peek above the waves. The crust is constantly shifting, nudged by Earth's molten undercurrent, colliding, stretching, folding like a slow-motion accordion played by a very sleepy giant. Under your toes, granite is being born. It's one of the Earth's favorite rock recipes, a mix of minerals slowly cooked beneath the surface. It's lighter than basalt, which means it floats more easily on the mantle. It's important because it gives land the audacity to stay above sea level. It's like the crust, developing enough self-esteem to rise out of the ocean and say, "Hello, I exist now." This emergence of land creates pockets of new opportunity. Tidal zones, rain catchments, protected lagoons, where chemistry can do weird little dances in semi-privacy. You take a few cautious steps forward, careful not to stub your imaginary toe on a not-quite-cooled lava shelf, and squint at the horizon. There's more dry land, no-ragged, uneven, and still steaming like a pot that's forgotten it's been left on. And the atmosphere above is beginning to change, too. Still thick, still moody, but starting to clear. Sunlight filters through in fat golden ribbons. You stretch your arms as if the warmth could soak into your bones, which, for the record, you don't have yet. No vertebrates here, no skeletons. It's just soft things in water, and the memory of heat underfoot. Now let's talk volcanoes, because this is their time to shine, or, more accurately, erupt. Back in the primordial ages, volcanoes weren't just a feature of the landscape, they were the landscape. Picture massive shield volcanoes, sprawling for hundreds of miles, spewing lava in slow, syrupy waves. Not the explosive tantrums we associate with Mount Vesuvius or Krakatoa. These were marathon runners, not sprinters. volcanoes did more than decorate the horizon. They built continents, altered climates, and stocked the atmosphere with chemicals that, if you weren't paying attention, might look like a recipe for disaster. Sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, methane, cocktail of gases that thickened the sky and helped trap warmth from that still shy sun. Climate regulation, courtesy of planetary burps. Mainstream fact. Some of the largest volcanic provinces on Earth date back to this time, like the Deccan Traps and the Siberian Traps. Although those specific ones came a bit later in geologic history, these weren't little mountain hiccups. They were massive lava floods that could cover entire modern-day countries. Quirky tidbit. There are ancient legends from vastly different cultures, mind you, that describe volcanoes as gods with strange pet companions. One Hawaiian story describes Pele, the goddess of volcanoes, traveling with a white dog. In Mesoamerican myth, fire serpents accompany gods of the underworld. The idea that volcanoes needed familiars, whether they'd be snakes, dogs, or something stranger, pops up more than you'd expect. Historians still argue whether these motifs developed independently or came from some primordial template of human storytelling. But here, in this version of the Earth's infancy, you imagine it quite literally. A volcano, vast and slow-breathing, sits across the plains. Steam dribbles from its flanks. It's a pet, a snake, sure, but not like the ones coiled in modern jungles. This one is elemental, half smoke, half ember. It winds lazily through the air, flicking an invisible tongue of heat, curling like incense in a forgotten temple. You sit at a distance, watching the snake trace loops through volcanic vents, its body illuminating gas pockets that ignite with brief, quiet flares. It doesn't hiss, it hums, low and long, as though in conversation with the volcano itself. Around you, the earth exhales. Rain begins to fall, a soft hiss as it hits cooling rock. The first real storms. It's a kind of rain that's still figuring out what it's supposed to do. No grass to soak, no gutters to flood, just rock and lava and endless thirsty cracks. You hold out your hand. The rain is warm, metallic. It smells like pennies and ozone. Each drop wears down the jagged stone by a fraction of a millimeter. It's soothing, this patient erosion. You could watch it for another few million years, and maybe you will. I know. Earth has a few moods. The oceans churn less angrily. The crust has settled somewhat. The air holds more oxygen, though it wouldn't be enough for you to take a proper breath. You'd still pass out dramatically, like someone poorly cast in a Victorian play. But give it time. Those stromatolites are still at it. In the distance, a plume of ash rises, not from a tantrum but a gentle sigh. The volcanic murmur as new rock pushes old rock aside. Everything feels slow, deliberate, like the planet is composing itself, note by note. No orchestra yet, just the plodding of bass drums and the occasional cymbal crash from a rogue eruption. You sit, you listen, and above all, you wait. The earth isn't in a hurry. Tonight, neither are you. You stay where you are for a while, nestled on this still warm crust, and let time pass like honey in cold weather, slow, thick, almost unwilling. The volcanic pet snake has slithered off into the mist, perhaps to curl around another caldera in need of company. The air smells less like brimstone now, and more like damp stone, touched with a whisper of minerals and ocean mist. A sign that something new is arriving. Something small, something squishy. You peer over the edge of a tide pool, the kind that's formed when ocean waves kiss the baby continent and then retract, leaving behind little puddles like forgotten thoughts. Inside, something wiggles. It's not much to look at. Just a few single-celled organisms drifting like bored jelly in microscopic ballet. But they're up to something. Life has been brewing here in this bubbly, protein-rich soup for a while now. These aren't the glamorous dinosaurs or the intimidating saber-toothed cats. These are the overlooked pioneers, tiny, weirdly determined cells, cobbled together with stubbornness and lipids. Fat bubbles with ambitions. Mainstream fact. Scientists believe life first emerged in these hydrothermal vent environments, where mineral-rich water, heated by the Earth's internal furnace, created perfect conditions for chemistry to try on biology's shoes. It didn't always succeed. There were misfires, mutations, outright disasters, but occasionally something worked. Something wiggled just right. You watch the process unfold slowly. A bubble becomes a blob divides, then again and again. There's no jazz hands involved, just a quiet persistence. The kind of progress that doesn't seek applause. These early forms of life prokaryotes lack a nucleus, lack complexity, but they make up for it by simply refusing to quit. You spot a cyanobacterium drifting lazily in a sunbeam, piercing the surface. This little thing is the great-great-grandparent of everything with lungs, fur, feathers, or existential dread. And all it's doing is photosynthesizing, turning light into energy, and exhaling oxygen as if it's no big deal. It's a quirky tidbit. Cyanobacteria, in their slime-act glory, often form stromatolites, those weird, lumpy reef-like structures that look like fossilized waffles. Some stromatolites in Australia are over 3.5 billion years old and are still quietly living their best microbial life. A colony so chill, it literally doesn't care that it predates language, money, or lactose intolerance. And here's where it gets beautifully ironic. The oxygen these early microbes produce, it nearly kills everything else. At the time, most organisms didn't use oxygen. They were anaerobic, living happily in a low-oxygen environment. When oxygen levels began to rise, thanks to our little green friends, here it caused what we now call the Great Oxygenation Event, which sounds like a happy spa promotion. It was actually Earth's first true extinction. Historians still argue whether this was an intentional microbial coup or just an evolutionary whoopsie. Some think oxygen was a waste product, never meant to alter the atmosphere so drastically. Others wonder if this was, in a sense, the planet's first biochemical rebellion. It's the way everything changed. You feel it in the air, just a trace more oxygen now. Not enough to fill your lungs, but a whisper of what's to come. The skies, once orange and murky, begin to pale. The clouds fluff up. There are still plenty of volcanic tantrums, sure, but now they compete with something new. The quiet resilience of life. Down in the shallows, a single-celled archaean bumps into a bacterium, and they do something completely unexpected. They merge, not eat, not kill. Just join forces. One becomes part of the other. It's the birth of the eukaryotic cell with compartments, a nucleus, ambitions beyond wiggling. This fusion is the biological equivalent of a buddy cop movie, two wildly different characters teaming up for survival. You shake your head. There are no Shakespearean plays yet, but the drama is real. 1 minute you're a lone microbe, minding your business. The next, you've acquired a roommate who insists on turning glucose into ATP energy like it owns the place. Which, to be fair, it kind of does. These internal powerhouses evolve into mitochondria, and the rest is, you guessed it, history. At your feet, more complex life begins to flicker into being. Protozoa, amoebas, cells that twitch and gulp and ooze their way through the microbial soup. The planet is still far from teeming, but it is stirring. The land remains mostly barren for a few brave colonies of slime clinging to rock faces and tidal flats. They're painting the stones in muted greens and browns like nature, trying out a watercolor set with only 2 colors. Somewhere nearby, a rain of meteorites thuds softly remnants from the early solar system. These aren't extinction-level events anymore, just gentle reminders that space hasn't forgotten you. Each impact stirs the surface, delivers new elements, occasionally kickstarts a fresh genetic shuffling. The universe, it seems, loves a remix. Overhead, the sky is darkening, not with smoke, but with twilight. There is no moonrise, yet it hasn't quite found its rhythm, but stars begin to wink into view. It's the kind of stars that watched all of this begin and will watch it end someday, too. Not a violent roar, just a soft, molten sigh. Maybe the lava will flow this way, maybe not. But for now, the earth is quiet, breathing, bubbling, evolving. You smile, or at least the version of you that exists here does, because the world is learning to live, and you're learning to wait. There's still so much ahead, fish with limbs, plants that make seeds, philosophers who argue about shadows and caves, but tonight, it's enough to know that life has begun. You roll gently to one side, stretching your toes toward the edge of an ancient puddle. It's not much more like a shimmering suggestion of water trapped in a shallow dent in the rock, but inside, something magical is brewing. Tiny multicellular clusters drift like clumps of lint in a cosmic dryer. Some pulse with rhythm, others tumble aimlessly. But one, a little colony with just enough symmetry to be charming, divides its duties between movement and digestion. You've just met the world's first overachiever Volvox, the social algae. As the twilight fades behind a distant ridge, a bluish-green hue tints the shallows. These are the algae's doing. They've moved beyond their single-celled ancestors and embraced teamwork. If single-celled life was Earth's toddler phase, this is more like the kindergarten of evolution sharing is happening, albeit grudgingly. Mainstream fact: around 600 million years ago, complex multicellular life began to appear. Not in a dramatic parade, mind you, more like a soft rollout. Think blobs, fronds, and gelatinous sheets clinging to seafloors. The Ediacaran, Bioto, these strange, pillow-shaped organisms drift into existence like guests arriving early to a party that hasn't started. You get the feeling they're not in a rush. Nothing is. The planet is still warming up figuratively and literally. Daylight hours are shorter. The atmosphere still lacks modern clarity, and well, you're just soaking it all in. One strand of seaweed curls around your ankle like a sleepy cat. Imagine naming it Greg. These Ediacaran creatures, most of them soft-bodied, don't leave behind dramatic fossil records. Just gentle impressions like someone pressed a slightly damp cushion into mud and walked away. Some resemble fronds or feathers. Others look like pancakes that gave up halfway through cooking. Scientists are still baffled about what many of them were. Animals, fungi, giant protozoa. Historians still argue whether they had mouths, how they reproduced, or even if they moved at all. Some theories suggest they simply absorb nutrients through their skin, like very lazy bath mats. Quirky tidbit: a few of these creatures, like Dickinsonia, are so strange that paleontologists once labeled them with every classification from worm to fungus to alien plant. It's the evolutionary equivalent of rummaging through your junk drawer and saying, "I think it's a charger, for something." The sea at your feet shimmers again. This time, not just with biology, but with new kinds of light, bioluminescence. Somewhere in the deep, creatures have started glowing. It's not decorative, it's functional communication, camouflage, sometimes even bait. You imagine these blinking organisms whispering to each other in pulses of gentle green and blue. The oceans are alive now, not just in the bacterial sense, but in layers. There are communities, predator-prey dynamics, early nervous systems flickering to life. You crouch beside a rock, watching a flatworm lurch forward in slow, gooey confidence. It doesn't have a brain exactly, but it knows which way is forward, and frankly, that's more than most of us manage before coffee. Meanwhile, something else is changing. Oxygen, once just an environmental curiosity, is beginning to reach new thresholds. Deep beneath the ocean, calcium and other minerals settle into the bodies of certain marine critters. Hard parts exoskeletons, shells begin to form. Fragile at first, like sugar spun too thin, but it's a start. You sit up as the Cambrian whispers its approach. Soft creatures begin evolving hard defenses. Not out of spite, but because everything else is also evolving teeth. Or the ancient equivalent little mouth cones, rasping patches, hardened mouth parts that suggest one thing. Dinner has become competitive. One particularly charismatic little bug-like creature, Anomalocaris, darts through the current like a flattened shrimp with ambition. It's the apex predator of its day, even though it looks like a googly-eyed slipper. You can't help but root for it. And there's Opabenia, of course. 5 eyes, one long tubular snout with a claw at the end. It glides by you, completely unaware that it will one day be featured on educational lunchboxes and weirdest prehistoric animals listicles. Even now, as the Cambrian life boom approaches, the oceans seem to pulse with rehearsal energy. Tentacles unfurl. Flippers flap uncertainly. Armor plates shift into place. The microbial world hasn't gone anywhere. Of course, it's still thriving in its invisible billions, but now it has company. Big enough to see, big enough to feel sorry for, when they bumble into volcanic vents and vanish in a puff of ancestral bad luck. Wouldn't you know it, some of them already seem to have personalities.
One long, wiggling creature, perhaps the ancestor of modern worms, zigzags through the water in a way that suggests it's showing off.
Another, slightly lumpier fellow, clings to a rock for dear life, like someone who just realized the tide is coming in and forgot their water wings. You feel it in your gut, or whatever dreamy shape your consciousness has. Here something's building. An ecosystem is stretching, testing its limbs. What began as lonely specks of carbon now gathers as a pulsing, glimmering ballet of proto-life. It's chaotic, yes, but it's also hopeful. A tide turning not just with water, but with ambition. Above you, the stars twinkle with mild amusement. They've seen this before, perhaps, or maybe not. Maybe Earth is their weird little cousin who just started finger painting on the cosmic refrigerator. Either way, something stirs within the oceans tonight, okay? And you, drowsy observer, time traveler of the most relaxed variety, are here to watch the curtain rise. You drift along a coastline that has no name, because names haven't been invented yet. Even time feels soft hair fluid like a tide pool. Above you, the sky is a faded watercolor, and below you, the sea is buzzing with creatures who've just discovered movement can be more than just functional. It can be dramatic. Welcome to the Cambrian explosion. A period of roughly 20 million years where evolution chugs 3 energy drinks and paints the oceans with everything it can think of. You wade through waters teeming with trilobites. Some scuttle, some roll up like pill bugs when startled. Most just mind their business, crunching algae or sediment with their little leg mouths. They're not winning any beauty contests, but they re the rock stars of their day starring in 270 million years worth of evolutionary reruns. You try not to step on one, though frankly they're everywhere. Mainstream fact. The Cambrian explosion about 541 million years ago marks one of the most significant periods in Earth's biological history. Nearly all the major animal groups we know today made their first appearance here. Sponges, worms, early ancestors of insects, even primitive Chordaceus, that includes you, kind of all began dabbling in the idea of being complex and multifunctional. But what's truly mesmerizing is the sheer weirdness of these designs. There's Hallucigenia, a worm-like creature that looks like a walking cactus on stilts. It takes you a moment to realize which end is the head. Historians still argue whether early reconstructions were upside down. For years, scientists believed its spines were legs, and its legs were spines. Poor thing just wanted to be taken seriously. Then there's Wawaxia, which looks like someone crossbred a slipper and a sea urchin. And of course Pacaya, the humble eel-like creature, swimming past you now. Barely bigger than a thumbnail, but carrying the future of vertebrates, and it's barely their spine. That's Ryder. Great dash, great dash, great dash, something dash, aquatic dash, grandparent, is currently wiggling past a colony of jellyfish without a care in the world. Quirky tidbit. Some of these Cambrian creatures may have had asexual, functioning eyes with lenses and all. One fossilized predator, Anomalocaris, boasted compound eyes with up to 16,000 lenses. That's more lenses than your phone camera has filters. It didn't blink because eyelids weren't in fashion yet. It just floated around. A giant shrimp thing with enough visual prowess to track prey with eerie precision. You meander through what looks like a forest of kelp, though it's actually early algae and sponge structures clumped into coral-like shapes. A bright ribboned creature darts between them. Is it a worm? A jelly? Very ambitious noodle? It doesn't matter. Evolution is throwing spaghetti at the wall, sometimes literally and seeing what sticks. Above the reef-like shallows, sunlight filters through in slow beams. The water here is warmer. Not tropical island smoothie warm, more like heated rock bath warm. You trail your fingers across a scaly patch of microbial mat. It's got texture. Life is learning how to arrange itself into scaffolds, shells, and networks. But it's not all beauty and biodiversity. Conflict arrives subtly at first. Predator and prey dynamics intensify. Some creatures develop harder shells. Others grow spikes or secrete noxious goo. It's an arms race, albeit one where the arms are mostly fins, feelers, and awkward bitey parts. You float past a cluster of tube-shaped animals anchored to a rock. They wave feathery arms in the water, filter feeding in what looks suspiciously like coordinated elegance. One jerks slightly and recoils, its neighbor bumps into it and sends a ripple through the colony. Are they communicating? Is that passive-aggressive behavior? Historians still debate whether early filter feeders responded to chemical cues or just reacted to water movement like over-caffeinated wind chimes. The ocean is now layered. There's the surface light zone where photosynthetic life blooms like underwater meadows. The mid-level twilight zone where predators with glowing lures begin to innovate in darkness. And then the mysterious abyss below, a realm still shrouded in pressure, silence, and speculation. You won't go down there tonight. That part of the tale comes later. For now, there's enough happening in the sun-dappled shallows. You find a quiet patch of sand and lay back. Soft currents tickle your shoulders. Translucent creature drifts above you, probably an early cnidarian, cousin to jellyfish. It pulses gently, unaware of how much drama its descendants will cause at beach vacations. It's easy to get lost here, not just in time, but in complexity. Every square meter of this ecosystem is an experiment. Some work, most don't. But the ones that do leave ripples. Genetic legacies that persist, mutate, and eventually become you. Yes, you. Lying here imagining trilobites as nature's Roombas, and it all began with the right kind of chaos. A world where volcanoes once ruled with lava and pet snakes, now handed the crown to creatures no larger than your thumbnail. The Earth isn't just changing, it's collaborating with itself. You rise, letting a small wave nudge you forward. The reef glows softly. You spot another Opabenia, this one slightly larger, giving you what can only be described as a side-eye, with 2 of its 5 lenses. It turns and scoots off, offended by your judgment. That's fair. Evolution doesn't care what you think. It just tries everything and lets history sort it out. Somewhere nearby, a trilobite stumbles into a crevice. Another follows. Is it a mating ritual? A conga line? Or just poor spatial awareness? No one can say for sure. You chuckle, then you yawn. Even evolution needs a nap now and then. You re-moving again, this time away from the kaleidoscopic oceans and onto land that just begun to believe in its own potential. It's the Ordovician and Silurian periods now, somewhere between 485 and 419 million years ago. Earth is feeling confident, throwing together continents, mountains, and its first clumsy attempts at terrestrial life, like a toddler learning how to stack blocks. The land is mostly barren still, a cracked and crumbling surface of rock and dust, though patches of green start dotting the landscape. These aren't forests or fields, yet just mosses and liverworts. Those determined little plant pioneers who basically said, "We're tired of floating around. Let's see what dry ground has to offer." Mainstream fact. The first true land plants are believed to have emerged during the Silurian period. They didn't have roots or leaves like modern plants, but spread across damp surfaces, absorbing nutrients straight from the air or soggy earth. They're the reason Earth's atmosphere starts shifting, because plants exhale oxygen. And with every tiny breath, they're preparing the planet for more complicated life. You trudge carefully over a patch of damp stone, where dark green fuzz grows in shaggy tufts. The air smells earthy, even though there's not much soil yet, just a smattering of decaying organic matter and grit. But here's the thing. It feels alive. Not bustling city street alive, more monastery garden at sunrise alive. Everything whispers, slowly in chlorophyll tones. You crouch to observe a cluster of spores clinging to a rock. One releases into the air, drifting like dandelion fluff on a breeze. Will it land somewhere and sprout, or fade into the dust? Either way, no one's watching, except maybe you. Quirky tidbit. Some scientists theorize that early plants formed fungal partnerships almost immediately after colonizing land. Moss and mushrooms were besties from day one. Mycorrhizal fungi may have helped ancient plants absorb nutrients from the barren soil, like a subterranean symbiosis hotline. Picture it. Fungi sliding into moss teams like, "Hey, you need phosphate?" You pause as the ground beneath you quivers slightly. No, it's not an earthquake. It's the movement of arthropods. Early millipede-like creatures are out for a stroll, maybe hunting microbes or just stretching their segmented legs. You catch sight of a scorpion ancestor the size of a paperback novel, tiptoeing through the moss like it's got errands to run. Historians still argue whether some of these early landwalkers were predators, scavengers, or just innocent side characters in the grand plant invasion. But one thing's for sure, life is inching further inland, and it's not going back. The sky shifts shades, again pale pink to soft orange. It's not because of pollution. It's the atmosphere's just figuring itself out. Oxygen levels are creeping upward, and the ozone layer is gradually forming, shielding the Earth from those overzealous UV rays. Without that invisible umbrella, stepping outside used to mean instant microbial sunburn. Now you might actually survive a day or two, You stroll toward a shallow pool where algae cling to pebbles and slippery green blankets. The water is cool to the touch, but not unpleasant. Inside, tadpole-like creatures dart around jawless fish with armored heads and bad attitudes. They seem important, somehow, like the kind of fish that think they invented swimming. Somewhere in the distance, a volcano lets out a long, lazy grumble. Nothing dramatic, just a reminder that tectonic plates still have opinions. The earth stretches, shifts, rearranges its bones. The continents are having an identity crisis splitting, bumping into each other, and sometimes forming shallow seas right in the middle of what will one day be Kansas. You find a spot to sit near the edge of one of these inland seas. Dragonflies buzz overhead. Not quite the ones you know, but close. The early prototypes. Their wings shimmer like stained glass, and their flight paths are delightfully erratic. You get the feeling they're showing off. "Look at me," one seems to say, barrel rolling past your ear. "I've got 360-degree vision and absolutely no chill." Then there's the sound, the soft rustling of leaves that aren't quite leaves, the chirps and clicks of insects tuning their instruments. Earth is composing its first ambient soundtrack. One that'll eventually become forests, whispering, rivers babbling, and wind weaving through tall grass. You glance down and see your reflection in the still water, only to have it interrupted by a ripple-o-water scorpion gliding across like it owns the place. Fair enough. It was here first. Just as you're getting comfortable, the clouds thicken, and a light drizzle begins. The rain isn't acidic anymore, which is progress. You let the drops fall on your skin, cool and strangely sweet, as if the sky is practicing kindness. The moss around you glistens, absorbing the moisture like a sponge in meditation. And that S when it hits you. This ISNT, just life adapting it, S, the earth testing limits. Plants are photosynthesizing under difficult conditions. Insects are breathing through holes in their sides. Even fungi are strategizing underground like little chemical engineers. You walk on, watching the rain carve tiny rivulets in the soil. Some of those rivulets will become streams, then rivers, then lifelines for whole ecosystems. Right now, they're just puddles. But give it a few million years. You pass another cluster of plants stall for their time, maybe ankle height to you. They sway gently, performing some botanical ballet you're not quite invited to. But that's okay. You're here to observe, to wander, to listen to the earth figure itself out. A scuttling sound behind you draws your attention. You turn slowly to see a centipede-like creature with more legs than it has good ideas. It pauses, raises its head, and then retreats under a rock. You've been deemed uninteresting. It's a compliment here. As the sun dips, casting long shadows over this brave new mossy world, you tuck your arms around yourself, not out of cold, but out of awe. You've seen oceans bloom with improbable creatures. Now you've watched plants take their first awkward steps onto dry land, mossy bootstraps and all. And the best part, the earth is just getting started. Your feet press into the soft, squishy soil. Yes, actual soil now, or at least a humble version of it. Organic matter has been decomposing long enough that you no longer walk on pure rock and misery. You're squarely in the Devonian period now. Somewhere around 419 to 359 million years ago. And this era docenti just dip its toes into the shallow end of land life fit cannonballs and trees. Real ones. You tilt your head back and squint into a canopy of unfamiliar green. These aren't oaks or pines, mind you, but giant fern-like plants, some branching upward like coral that got ambitious. Cladoxylopsis saying that 5 times while sleepwalking, are towering above you with hollow trunks and no real leaves. But to your ancient eyes, they might as well be redwoods. Mainstream historical fact, the Devonian is often called the Age of Fishes, and for good reason. The seas are absolutely teeming with armored fish, early sharks, and jawed vertebrates that would absolutely destroy your average pet goldfish. But it's also when forests first appear, covering vast swaths of the land and shaping both climate and soil chemistry. You push through a wall of club masses and catch a glimpse of something moving in the distance. Not a fish this time, something with legs, hips, maybe even lungs. Amphibians are starting to haul themselves out of the water like overly confident toddlers. Tiktaalik is the poster child of this movement. A fish with elbows and a strong sense of direction. Quirky tidbit. Some early amphibians may have still had gills alongside lungs. Basically, they were hedging their bets. I might live on land, they seem to say, but I'm keeping my floaties just in case. Scientists discovered fossil evidence that suggests some creatures could both walk and respire underwater. Try that at your next swimming lesson. You crouch near a stream where one such creature is sunbathing on a rock. It's got stubby legs, a broad, flat head, and the blank expression of something that hasn't figured out stairs yet. It blinks at you once, twice, then flops back into the water with all the grace of a dropped towel. The earth smells different, now. Earthier, obviously, but also vaguely spicy. That's because primitive forests are releasing spores and organic chemicals into the air. It's not quite sandalwood and pine just yet, but we're getting there. You breathe deeply. It smells like life finally got comfortable enough to decorate. Historians still argue whether this surge in plant life helped cool the earth by removing CO from the atmosphere or accidentally triggered an ice age by overdoing it. Plants, saving the world, one minor catastrophe at a time. You walk deeper into the forest, you spot insects flitting from stalk to stalk. Some are enormous, like the size of dinner plates. Dragonflies with wingspans that would block out your Kindle light. They haven't reached their final boss form yet, but you can see the potential in their chaotic, zigzagging flight paths. You hear a low rumble and step carefully. Volcanoes are still pretty chatty in this chapter of Earth's diary. You turn a corner and find a bubbling, steaming vent spewing sulfurous clouds into the forest. And here against all logic life thrives. Extremophile bacteria bloom on hot rocks, painting them in lurid oranges and acidic yellows like someone spilled highlighter fluid everywhere. A little further uphill, a plateau opens out over an ancient floodplain. Rivers slither through it like glassy serpents, splitting and rejoining, depositing sediment that'll one day form fossil-rich layers. You sit and watch as a herd of small tetrapods, primitive cousins of frogs and salamanders, waddle through the mud, leaving tiny handprints in the wet clay. Back in the forest, one tree keels over and crashes to the ground, releasing a puff of spores so dense it looks like smoke. Fungi are quick to move in, beginning the breakdown process. It's weirdly beautiful. Death is renovation. The tree fall gives you a clearer view of the sky, and you notice it's not the violent, hazy soup of Ian's past. No, it's clearer now. The ozone layer's strengthening. The sun is a little less hostile. The air is just breathable enough. If you squint, you might still need a helmet, but hey, progress. You find a stream and cup some of the water in your hand. It's clean, almost sweet. Just behind you, an amphibian lets out a noise somewhere between a croak and a sneeze. You turn to see it squinting at a wasp-like insect. They have no predators yet, these bugs. Nothing flies fast enough to catch them yet. You wander past what looks like a plant nursery, spore-based plants, mosses, ferns, and early seed-bearers growing in tight clusters. One particularly eager, tree-like plant is trying to grow sideways along a fallen log, as if it just got tired of verticality. Just then the sunlight dims, and you hear the high-pitched drone of insects growing louder. A swarm is rising from a nearby pool. You move quickly. This is not a bug spa. They're just doing their thing, but you'd prefer not to become part of their life cycle. You take shelter under a huge lycophyte, its umbrella of fronds sheltering you like some ancient botanical cabana. As the sun begins to set, yes, Earth has sunsets now worth noticing you. See silhouettes moving in the distance, amphibians hopping between trees, insects darting for shelter, the forest shifting as temperatures drop. It's all so rhythmic, yet. There's no calendar yet, but life is starting to understand the difference between day and night. You sit cross-legged on the damp ground, eyes half-closed, listening to the Devonian breathe, inhales spores and exhales mist. It sings in frog-throated harmony and crickets that haven't been invented yet. Somewhere nearby, another volcano rumbles, as if reminding everyone it's still the landlord. You lean against a warm stone and look up at the canopy. Green, layered, imperfect but beautiful. You've walked through a planet that learned how to grow things taller than you, a place where fish learned to walk, and plants decided gravity was optional. And still, the journey continues. A faint mist curls along the forest floor as you step forward again. Your shoes or, let's be honest, your metaphorical cave feet softly brushing away clumps of Devonian moss. But before you can admire this newly forested world too long, the path under you begins to darken, not in some poetic twilight way. No, this is the Carboniferous period, and Earth just dimmed the lights for a dramatic entrance. You look up. Everything feels larger. Trees stretch even higher, and the undergrowth thickens into a green labyrinth. Towering lycophytes, some as tall as a modern skyscraper elevator ride, dominate the canopy. Beneath them, giant horsetails and ferns elbow each other for sunlight like passive-aggressive roommates. Mainstream historical fact. This era spanning roughly 359 to 299 million years ago is named for the thick, carbon-rich coal beds that formed when these colossal plants died, fell, and were compressed by millennia of mud and pressure. So next time you turn on a light, thank a 30-meter fern that didn't quite make it to retirement. But let's get to the real stars of this act, the bugs. You squint and flinches. A dragonfly buzzes past your ear. It's the size of a seagull. Megunura, as scientists call it, is all wings and attitude. It zips between trees like a caffeinated drone, its shadow brushing your face. No worries. It's probably not hunting humans yet. Probably. That's because oxygen levels are off the charts, up to 35%, compared to today's 21%. You feel it with every breath. Your chest rises easily. Your limbs feel floaty, like you're in some gentle dream. This oxygen-rich atmosphere fuels giantism. It's arthropods. Even Millipedes arthropleura comes to mind. A many-legged horror stretching nearly 2 meters long, all grow to nightmarishly majestic sizes. You step carefully. Crunching a prehistoric centipede might get you cancelled in this forest. Quirky tidbit. Some paleobotanists believe that these massive bugs could only exist because of the hyperoxygenated air. If you were to magically plop a Meganura into today's atmosphere, it would suffocate like a marathoner in a turtleneck. You duck beneath a low branch, its surface shiny with dew and crawling with mossy lichen. Something chirps nearby. Possibly a tetrapod calling to its mate, or maybe just yelling at a rock. Amphibians are thriving in this muggy world. Some look like a cross between an eel and a lizard, their smooth, damp skin reflecting the light in shades of gray and green. You pause near a shallow pool, where the water's glassy surface reveals a bustling daycare of tadpoles, fish, and insect larvae. You're watching the first ecosystems that vaguely resemble something familiar. Food chains, predator-prey dynamics, passive-aggressive territorial disputes. It's all beginning to look like life is getting complicated. Historians still argue whether early reptiles appeared in the Carboniferous or slightly before. The fossil record is just cryptic enough to let debates simmer. But one thing's for sure. The very first amniotes creatures that lay eggs on land rather than water emerge here, changing the parenting game forever. No more jelly-like clutches left behind in a pond buffet. Now, eggs come with a protective shell, like bringing your own tent to a music festival. You reach a clearing where the sky is visible again, and just in time, you want to see the storm rolling in. Not just any storm. Carboniferous thunderstorms are theatrical. Lightning crackles through dense fog, illuminating the black outlines of trees like giant veins. Rain falls hard, tapping out a rhythm on the canopy, turning everything slick and dark. Sheltering beneath a massive fern-frond arch, you can't help but admire Earth's evolving sense of drama. The rain smells sweet, earthy, and tinged with a trace of sulfur. Somewhere nearby, a chorus of amphibians answers the thunder like it's open mic night at the swamp. You make your way through ankle-deep water, stepping onto a rise where the ground begins to firm beneath your feet. Charcoal-colored stones poke out from under the moss, hinting at another recent fire, yes, even in this rainforest-like world. Wildfires occasionally sweep through, sparked by lightning or volcanic venting. But thanks to the abundant plant life, the forest regrows quickly like it barely noticed the interruption. Insects skitter away as you brush past a rotting log and you pause to peer inside. Fungi of all shapes and textures are colonizing it, their fruiting bodies glowing faintly in the dim light. Bioluminescence? Possibly you'd ask a mycologist, but none exist for another few 100 million years. Their loss. Spot movement among the mushrooms. A small reptile, maybe an early Hylonomus, darts from cover, its tiny claws scrabbling for traction. It pauses, blinks, then scuttles up a tree root and out of sight. You smile. It looks like a lizard, but it's so much more. These little guys will eventually inherit the earth. Above you, the thunder quiets. The rain eases into a hush, just a whisper across the leaves. You keep moving, the path now climbing toward a higher ridge where the view expands outward. The forest rolls endlessly across the horizon, interrupted only by the occasional meandering river or smoking volcanic dome. You stop, finally, and sit on a warm, sun-steamed rock. The mist lifts slightly, revealing a landscape that somehow feels both alien and oddly nostalgic. You recognize the patterns of life. The way ecosystems click together, the balance, the chaos, the beauty. Somewhere in that layered distance, the first reptile breathes out in the warmth of dawn. Somewhere else, a tree cracks under its own weight and falls with a sigh. And beneath it all, coal forms slowly, patiently pressing down time into something you'll one day use to roast marshmallows. You lay back, letting your muscles loosen as the last of the thunder fades. The carbon-rich world around you hums softly like a lullaby of leaf, water, and air. Still lying on that warm carboniferous rock, you exhale slowly, watching a wisp of mist trail skyward like it's too tired to be a cloud. No, but this earth isn't one to stay sleepy for long. No. Just as your limbs begin to melt into the stone, a low rumble vibrates beneath you, not thunder this time, but something deeper, older. A tectonic shuffle. You're moving into the Permian period now, where the continents have finally gathered for their version of a family reunion, and it's awkward. All the landmasses smoosh together into a single supercontinent called Pangaea. It stretches across much of the globe like a slow-motion jigsaw puzzle that's given up on individuality. Mainstream historical fact, Pangaea isn't just one of those neat trivia terms from school. It drastically reshapes the Earth's climate. With so much land in one place, interiors become arid, like the forgotten corners of a dehydrated sponge. The lush swamp forests shrink. Coal swamps dry up. Bugs get smaller. Amphibians sulk in shady riverbeds. And you're trudging across this dry, cracked terrain under a sky that feels way too wide. The trees are thinning, instead of fern jungles. You now get scattered conifers and hardy plants that look like they've had been through something because they have. Surviving on this Pangaean savanna takes grit and good roots. The wind carries sand, not mist, and you wrap your metaphorical cloak tighter around you. Every step sends up a puff of ochre dust, which settles on your skin like seasoning. Somewhere off to the west, volcanoes are doing what they do best, grumbling. Burping out clouds of ash and possibly ruining someone's prehistoric picnic. Quirky tidbit, there's fossil evidence that Permian reptiles may have burrowed underground to escape the brutal heat. Did you pass what might be one such burrow perfectly spiraled into the rock-hard soil? If you're imagining tiny reptiles in sunglasses sipping swamp water down there, well, same. The dominant life now. Reptiles, amphibians have had their moment in the swampy spotlight. But as things dry out, scaly creatures with waterproof eggs and better sun tolerance start to run the show. You squint toward a ridge where a Dimetrodon you? No. It's a sail-backed lizard that isn't technically a dinosaur. It's like it owns the place, which honestly, it kinda does. It glances your way, its crocodilian eyes blinking slowly as it adjusts its posture to better catch the sun. That sail on its back, it's possibly a thermal regulator, though historians still argue whether it functioned like a solar panel or just looked. Impressive during speed dating events. Either way, you don't make eye contact. The Permian period is about transition. Life on land is diversifying in weird and often experimental ways. You spot a reptile with tusks that probably looked cooler in its headshot. Elsewhere, creatures with weird beaks, spikes, or sideways walking legs shuffle past like guests at a costume party where no one compared notes. Scholars still debate what drove these strange anatomical flourishes. Was it predator-prey arms races, sexual selection, or just the Earth's way of stress-eating evolution? No one's quite sure, but the results are spectacularly strange. You climb a ridge, the rocks beneath you cracked and splintered from millions of years of geological pressure. At the summit, you can see it, a vast salt basin where an ancient sea once lay. Now it's dry, parched, its former glory only remembered in fossilized coral and patches of white mineral dust. But even here, life is stubborn. Lichens cling to the rock faces like tiny mosaics. Insects buzz in tight swirls near the few remaining pools of briny water. And if you kneel carefully, you'll see the imprints of trilobites, long extinct, fossilized into what's basically Earth's scrapbook. Far to the south, glaciers cling to the polar regions, a reminder that the climate is still on its roller coaster path. Earth swings wildly between hot and cold, wet and dry, like it's testing out every version of itself before settling down. Honestly, who is she? We may never know. You keep moving, dusk beginning to settle as the world around you starts to cool. The red rocks turn bronze, the shadows stretch, and with nightfall comes a surprising chorus, chirping, hissing, whispery things from the underbrush. Even in this arid world, life doesn't go silent. You find a flat stone and sit, your back against the roots of a gnarled tree that may or may not be eyeing you. Overhead, the stars emerge, bright, sharp, and a little too close. The lack of humidity makes the constellations feel like someone punched holes in a velvet curtain just for you. Then, a flicker. Not fireflies, too early, not lightning. This is the flicker of something brewing beneath Earth's crust. See, the Permian period ends with a dramatic curtain call. You may have heard of the Great Dying, yes, that's the actual nickname. Around 252 million years ago, something went very wrong. Volcanoes erupted in what is now Siberia, possibly for thousands of years. The skies filled with ash, the oceans turned acidic. And over 90% of marine species and 70% of land species vanished like they'd just left the chat. Historians still argue whether it was entirely volcanic activity, a meteor impact, or the tragic result of too much continental breakfast. But whatever it was catastrophic. You shift uncomfortably on your rock. The air feels thick. The birds protobirds are quiet. The trees seem to lean slightly inward, as if bracing for something they can't name. This is one of those moments in Earth's history that is both awe-inspiring and deeply humbling. And yet even this wasn't the end. Life doesn't stop. It stalls, it shudders, it hides. But it doesn't stop. You close your eyes, breathing in the mineral scent of dry stone and the faint whiff of volcanic smoke from the distance. Whatever comes next, you'll face it like the scaly, sun-warmed reptile you secretly are. The wind picks up again as you move into the aftermath, quiet, eerie, like the earth's holding its breath. You're walking across ground that's seen the Great Dying. Ash still lingers in the cracks. Even the air seems to carry a memory of things lost. If there were ghosts of trilobites, this is where they'd hover. It's probably judging your choice of footwear. But things are stirring again. You're stepping into the Triassic period now. After all that fire and loss, Earth does what it always does, rebuilds. It's like watching a burned forest sprout green shoots, except those sprouts are weird reptiles and suspiciously early dinosaurs. The landscape feels experimental. It's like someone handed evolution a sketchbook and said, try something new, but make it weird. And oh, it does. Mainstream historical fact, the Triassic is when the very first dinosaurs start to appear. Not the big stars like T-Rex or Triceratops, those are still eons away but small. Quick, lightly built creatures like Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus. You spot one sprinting across the cracked earth, all elbows and attitude. Think of it as the raccoon of its time, scrappy, fast, and probably not above stealing snacks. The terrain is still dry in many places, thanks to Pangaea being a single massive continent. Rain has a hard time making it inland. But there are also coastal areas, lagoons and river systems, where life gathers like party guests around a punch bowl. You follow one such river, the water sluggish and a little greenish, lined with cycads and horsetails. On a branch above, a creature chirps. It looks like a lizard in a feather bow, and it might be. This is when feathers begin to show up, probably for insulation rather than flight. Scholars still argue whether these early feathers were also for mating displays, camouflage, or just because they made the reptile feel fancy. You crouch by the riverbank where amphibians are making a modest comeback. They're not the giants they used to be, but some, like the Metaposaurus, still reach impressive sizes. One floats lazily nearby, its wide, flat head just barely above water. It blinks at you with that slow, prehistoric patience. Maybe it's wondering whether you taste like beetles. What's that crawling out of the mud beside it? Oh, it's you again, but metaphorically. Mammal-like reptiles, or therapsids, are hanging on in small numbers. One of them snuffles in the dirt nearby, its body low to the ground, with fur that looks more like stubborn fuzz. Might be your great dash, great dash, great dash, grand dash, lizard dash cousin. Give it a nod, a quirky tidbit. Some Triassic therapsids had whisker holes in their skulls, suggesting they may have had sensitive facial whiskers, like cats. So yes, Earth might have been full of weird proto-mammals, bumping into things with twitchy mustaches. You wander farther, finding your way into a more volcanic landscape. The Earth is still restless lava oozes in some regions, and the sky sometimes turns a shade of orange that makes you question whether sunsets are romantic or mildly threatening. The smell of sulfur is your constant travel companion, like that one friend who won't stop talking during long car rides. Still, there's beauty here. Tree ferns wave in the heat haze. Beetles with iridescent shells scuttle across bark. Insects buzz in chaotic harmony. Somewhere in the canopy, an ancestor of the modern dragonfly darts past, its wingspan wide enough to require air traffic control. You duck. The Triassic Ocean, meanwhile, is reinventing itself. Coral reefs try to return, but it's the marine reptiles that steal the spotlight. You follow a trail down to the shore, where a sleek ichthyosaur leaps from the waves, twisting midair before splashing back with a showy ripple. Part dolphin, part lizard, all attitude. You wade in a little deeper. The water is warm, almost bath-like, and beneath the surface, schools of fish shimmer past, glittering like spilled coins. A Nothosaurus cruises below you, glancing up with teeth that suggest it's not into sharing snacks. You wisely retreat. The air feels different now. More oxygen, perhaps. The plants are back in business, spreading, adapting, anchoring the soil with slow determination. The forests are expanding again. Not lush rainforests, but determined groves of conifers and ginkgos. You press your hand to the bark of one, its surface cool, its scent sharp and clean. Scholars still argue whether the dinosaurs gained dominance because of this great dying reset, or whether they were simply better adapted for the weird new world that followed. Whatever the cause, they're rising now. They're leaner, faster, more efficient. You see it in how they move, fluid, calculated, almost cocky. And then you feel it, a slight tremor, a foreshadowing. You pause mid-step. Something big is coming. The Triassic ends, as you might guess by now, with drama. Another extinction event, though not as catastrophic as the one before, clears the ecological stage again. It's possibly triggered by volcanic activity in the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, which sounds like the name of a dystopian government, but is actually just a giant lava field. And just like that, many of the early reptiles vanish. The ripsids thin out. Amphibians take another hit. But the dinosaurs? They seize the opportunity like interns who suddenly find themselves promoted to CEO. You watch the sky darken again, the familiar veil of volcanic ash sweeping across the horizon like a curtain being drawn. You lie back on a moss-covered log and exhale. You've made it through another mass extinction. That's 3 now. Frankly, you're getting good at this. Stars blink into view overhead, and with them, the quiet promise of something extraordinary on the horizon. A new cast of creatures. Bigger, bolder, teethier. But for now, rest. The world is resetting itself once more. And you, curled into the still warm earth, drift with it. You wake to birdsong that isn't quite birdsong, more like a series of echoing, hollow screeches layered over the rustle of wind through cicads. It's the Jurassic now, and you're in a world that feels like nature's first blockbuster sequel. Louder, taller, and far more dramatic. Trees have grown skyscraper high. Conifers twist toward the sky, and everything seems to be either hunting or avoiding being hunted. You stretch and take a step and immediately trip over a fossilized dung pile. Welcome to the golden age of the dinosaurs. Mainstream historical fact. The Jurassic period marks the true rise of the classic dinosaurs. The sauropods, like Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus, now tower over the forests like living cranes. You watch one lumber past, its long neck swaying like a mast in a windless harbor. The ground trembles faintly with each step, like the world itself is sighing under its weight. You decide to follow it. Why? Because humans haven't evolved yet, and you're clearly not big on self-preservation. A few smaller dinosaurs scatter through the underbrush. One looks at you with a tilted head, feathers ruffling. Chirps and darts off, possibly to tattle to something larger. Scholars still argue whether these early feathers were purely for temperature control, or if dinosaurs had already discovered the art of looking fabulous. Farther ahead, you pass into a canyon carved by a meandering stream. The walls are dotted with moss and early flowering plants, which are just starting to explore their potential. The colors are richer here, purples, reds, oranges, like a toddler got loose with a paint set and had no adult supervision. You pause beside a fern and notice a cicada-like insect the size of your hand. It stares at you. You stare back. Mutual respect is established. High above, pterosaurs glide, not quite birds, not quite reptiles there, the awkward cousins at the evolutionary reunion. One swoops low, and you duck instinctively. Its wingspan casts a brief shadow over your path, and you realize, with the kind of clarity that only comes from prehistoric fear, that it definitely just looked at you like a snack. Quirky tidbit. Some pterosaurs had crests that were larger than their entire bodies, shaped like sails. Fans, or the kind of hat you'd wear to win the Kentucky Derby. Paleontologists think they might have been for mating displays. But honestly, some of them just scream midlife crisis. You trek onward, crossing a ridge where the forest parts to reveal a valley below. And oh, what a view! 8 of Stegosaurus graze near a mineral-rich stream, their plated backs catching the light like living armor. Their tails twitch occasionally, each one tipped with bony spikes. You're reasonably sure they're harmless, till one of them swings its tail into a boulder which promptly shatters. Okay then, no sudden movements. And here, in the quieter parts of the landscape, come the mammals. Tiny, mostly nocturnal, probably anxious. You catch one curled in the roots of a tree, blinking at you. Looks like a cross between a shrew and a nervous librarian. These tiny furballs are our ancestors. Still here? Still skittering around between the feet of giants? You huddle near a small campfire you didn't build. The air cools as night creeps in. Somewhere in the dark, a predator roars a deep, resonant sound that makes the back of your neck tighten. You don't see it, but you feel it. It's probably a theropod, maybe even Allosaurus. A reminder that this age of giants doesn't just mean gentle plant munchers. Historians still argue whether Allosaurus hunted in packs or was more of a solitary ambush predator. Either way, you decide not to investigate personally. You wrap yourself tighter in your imaginary blanket of invincibility and move on. Back near the coast, the sea is changing too. Marine reptiles are ruling the waves. You lean over a cliff and spot a pliosaur, all muscle and teeth cruising just beneath the surface. It opens its jaws in a lazy yawn, and you count enough teeth to reconsider any future snorkeling ambitions. Further out, ammonites drift. Spiraled shells catch the sunlight like seashell jewelry.
They're beautiful, strange, and absolutely everywhere.
Paleontologists today use them as index fossils, which is a fancy way of saying, oh look, a timestamp, another tremor underfoot, not the catastrophic kind. Just the earth reminding you that it's never still for long. Volcanic activity in the background continues like low, distant thunder. Magma churns below, shaping future mountain ranges, preparing the world for even more shifting. The night deepens. Fireflies blink through the trees, or something that looks like fireflies. You lie down near a bubbling spring, its steam curling into the air. Everything is so alive now, so confident. It's a world that has found its rhythm, at least for now. As your eyes close, you hear the echoing beat of wings. The gentle snort of a grazing dinosaur, the delicate trill of night creatures still too small to matter to most. But they'll matter later. You know that. The small things always do. The Jurassic draws to a close, not with a bang, but with a building tension. Subtle environmental shifts, sea levels changing. Tectonic whispers becoming louder. Feel that something big is coming again. But not tonight. Tonight, the earth is rich and green and roaring with life. And you, tucked under fern leaves older than empires, breathe in the warm air and let your thoughts slow. By the time your eyes open again, something feels ... heavier. Not just your eyelids, but the atmosphere itself. The Jurassic curtain has fallen, and you find yourself at the dawn of the Cretaceous. The air carries a bit more moisture. The plant life seems even more ambitious. And, somewhere not too far off, a duck-billed dinosaur honks with all the grace of a kazoo in distress. You smile, because in the Cretaceous, even the giants sound ridiculous sometimes. You brush past a towering magnolia tree, new arrival in Earth's green room. Flowering plants are suddenly popping up like eccentric party guests. They bring color, scent, and a general vibe of let's make pollination complicated. Bees haven't yet RSVP'd, but early insects are testing the buffet. Petals unfold beside your feet like sleepy umbrellas, and for a moment, you forget that somewhere nearby, a Tyrannosaurus rex is probably eyeing its brunch. Mainstream historical fact. The Cretaceous period is when the Earth ecosystems hit their peak diversity before the Big Reset. Dinosaurs are at their most varied now horned ones, frilled ones, armored ones, and those with tails like medieval flails. You pass a herd of Corythosaurus, their helmet-like crests vibrating as they hum to each other, possibly just chatting or maybe organizing a synchronized dance number. Historians still argue whether these crests were strictly for communication or also for internal cooling, sound amplification, or just good fashion. And then you hear it, a deep, thudding sound, like drums being struck by mountains. The king is near. You crouch behind a tree the size of a small house and watch as Tyrannosaurus rex swaggers by. Not runs, not stomps, just strolls, like it knows the franchise is named after it. Its tiny arms are a little funny up close, but those jaws are the stuff of legend. And yet weirdly, it's kind of sleepy looking. You suspect this one is full or bored. Quirky tidbit. Some scientists believe T-Rex may have napped like giant birds, tucking its head under one arm. Just imagine that. The apex predator of North America. Having a cozy lie down with its stubby arm pillow, you creep away, grateful for your dream passenger status. It starts to rain, not the sudden storms of earlier epics, but a slow, misty drizzle that makes the landscape even more lush. Beneath the shelter of a fan palm, you sip water from a leaf, letting your mind wander. Mammals are evolving in the shadows, still small but more varied. Some are even gliding now, flapping between branches like nervous paper airplanes. One pauses to sniff your toe. You're flattered. The Cretaceous isn't all dinosaurs, though far from it. Volcanoes still grumble beneath the surface, and oceans are bustling with life that looks like someone played mix-and match with sharks and sea lizards. You wander toward a shoreline where the water gleams silver under an overcast sky. Marine reptiles dominate here. Zasas, Plesiosaurus, and other prehistoric sea monsters glide through the waves like torpedoes wrapped in prehistoric style. You spot a Mosasaurus breaching the water like it S, auditioning for a film it doesn't know it's already starring in. Back on land, continents drift slowly apart, Africa and others, breaking up like an awkward group chat. Plate tectonics continue to rearrange Earth's furniture, while mountain ranges are sketched into the horizon. You stand atop a newly formed ridge and watch the world rearrange itself with no sense of hurry, yet with absolute certainty. And then, high in the sky, birds, real ones this time. They've evolved from their dinosaur ancestors. And though they're still getting used to the idea, you see feathers of every shade fluttering in the air. Some look like small hawks. Others look like confused peacocks with lizard tails. The line between dino and bird is now so thin, you can practically hear evolution whispering. Close enough, you pass a nest perched in the crook of a tree. Inside, little downy hatchlings peep and wriggle, blinking at the world with fresh, curious eyes. One of them sneezes. You're charmed. For all the thunder and drama of this age, it's these tiny moments that feel the most enduring. As you make your way across a valley lush with cycads and palm-like ferns, you begin to notice something odd, a tension in the air, subtle like the last chord of a song lingering a beat too long. The earth feels. It's uncertain. Historians still argue whether some species sense the coming end if migration patterns or nesting habits shifted subtly in response to what was approaching. But right now, in this dreamlike walk, you just sense change. The clouds thicken. The light fades, not with dusk, but with something heavier. A kind of cosmic shrug you can't quite place. Far across the ocean, a ripple of wind shakes the trees. Then silence. You pause. The forest pauses. A moment of suspended breath. But not tonight. Not yet. 'Cause tonight, you're still walking through a living world. Still hearing the calls of creatures, ancient and brave, absurd and majestic. You settle near a grove where fireflies soar. Their prehistoric equivalents drift between leaves. You hear the gentle rustling of wings, the echo of distant waves, and the purring rumble of a sleepy stegosaur somewhere nearby. in the volcanoes. They're quiet now, resting, dreaming of their next act. You lie down in the grass, head resting on a pile of moss, and close your eyes. The earth turns slowly beneath you. There is warmth and breath and movement. You are part of it all, just another set of footprints in the clay of deep time. You wake to silence, stillness so complete, it feels like the world has paused. But the earth never really pauses, does it? Even now, beneath your feet, the plates shift in their ancient tectonic shuffle. And above, in the darkening sky, stars are beginning to pierce through, indifferent to whatever happens below. The Cretaceous is nearing its curtain call. You sit up slowly in a clearing, the trees gently rustling around you as if whispering about something you're not supposed to know yet. A few familiar dinosaurs graze nearby, placid and unaware, an ankylosaurus, with a clubbed tail shaped like a medieval morning star. A triceratops chewing in slow motion like a cow that's seen some stuff. But something is coming. Far above the clouds, far beyond even the thin blue atmosphere of Earth, an object is racing toward you. You can't see it, of course. You're just a sleepy traveler lying in the grass. But if you could see it, you'd watch a 10-kilometer-wide asteroid, screaming through space with the urgency of a late pizza delivery. It's headed for what will one day be the peninsula. Historians still argue whether the asteroid alone caused the extinction, or if it was the final domino in a chain of volcanism, cooling, and oxygen shifts. Either way, you're not sticking around for the fireworks. Before that moment, before the flash, before the wave, before the sky turns to glass, life is still, inexplicably, beautiful. You spend a few more moments walking through the jungle, where dragonflies with wingspans longer than your arm drift between sunbeams. You smell wet leaves, hear frogs chirping in some ancient amphibian code, and step carefully over a log covered in fluorescent moss. And then, in a quiet cove nestled among limestone hills, you find a petroglyph, a carving. It's older than human memory, somehow etched by hands not yet imagined. It depicts a volcano with a curling snake wrapped around it. Volcanoes as gods, snakes as symbols of rebirth, wisdom, danger. You touch it lightly and it feels warm. You remember? Then, all those cultures across time that saw volcanoes as divine. In Polynesia, Peel ruled fire and lava. The Romans gave us Vulcan, blacksmith of the gods. And across early Mesoamerican mythologies, fire and serpent often walked together. Quirky tidbit. In ancient Mesoamerican ritual, snakes were kept in temple precincts, not just as symbols, but as living participants, sometimes petted, sometimes fed, sometimes consulted like scaly little weather apps with tongues that tasted the divine. You think again about how people will one day gaze at dormant craters and build shrines around them, or watch an eruption and declare it the wrath of a god with glowing eyes and sulfur breath. The parallels are oddly soothing. A bird flutters down beside you, looks like a prehistoric magpie, and promptly steals a shiny rock from your hand before hopping away like it owns the forest. You chuckle. Even at the end of the world, birds will be birds. You climb one last ridge. From the top, you can see the curvature of the earth, faint and distant and reassuring. Somewhere over the horizon, a very bad day is beginning. But here, for this final stretch of your journey, the earth breathes in peace. You sit. You listen. The wind carries the breath of millions of years, asins and ferns, feathers and thunder. You feel the pulse of life, not as something fragile, but as something stubborn. It adapts. It waits. It becomes. In time, mammals will rise. Small rodents will scurry into niches left behind by giants. Birds will inherit the wind. Volcanoes will sleep, then wake, then sleep again. Humanity will arrive much, much later, scratching stories into stone, then onto paper, then into the clouds. But for now, you simply rest. Eyes closed, heart quiet, feet dangling into a stream that has trickled across 80 million years of mossy stone. The volcano behind you grumbles softly, not in anger, but in memory. The deep, dreaming snore of a planet that has never stopped changing, even when it pretended to. And now, you let everything slow down. The footsteps of ancient creatures fade into mist behind you. That volcano, once glowing and mighty, now quiets to a gentle hum, like a warm breath beneath the earth's surface. The air feels heavier, but not in a burdensome way, more like a blanket settling over you. You lean back, imagining the stars blinking into their places above. No rush, no fanfares, just light stretching across time, whispering through space. The same stars that once watched over lava lakes and seashells on mountain peaks now watch over you, unmoving, patient. The grass beneath you softens. The sounds around you, blurt tree frogs blending into a nighttime lullaby, the wind brushing leaves like pages of an endless story. You let go of time, of facts, of whatever comes next. Because really, the earth never needed a narrator. It's been telling bedtime stories for 4.5 billion years, shifting, bubbling, layering memory upon memory in stone and ash and root. You are a speck of dust in that grand geology, yes, but even specks can feel the heartbeat of a planet. So let yourself drift now, back through the molten beginnings, past the steam and the storm, into the slow silence of deep time. The gods have slumbered, the snakes have curled into nests, the fire has dimmed, and you are part of it now. Breathe in once more deep and easy. Let the volcanoes sleep. Let the stars blink. Let the earth keep spinning beneath you. You're safe here. You're part of the story now. Good night.